Can you possibly imagine Pender Island without our community hall? Me? I can't. And the reason for that is because our hall is absolutely vital to this island. So many amazing events have happened in this hall that I've attended, and it is such a special place. But there was a time years ago where we didn't have a hall. And in the early 90s, that's when things started to change. Because Karl Hamson, who was incredibly pivotal to the story of the building the hall, he built a barn only about a kilometer away from here. And the design of his barn, well, our community hall today is based on the same design as that one. So in the 90s, a lot of great community events took place at Karl's barn. Subsequently, he donated the land for the eventual building of the hall. And if you want to find out about the details, about all the volunteering that went into creating this place, if you want to hear about how they found the wood to build it, if you want to hear about the incredible stories of what these carvings are all about and how they came to be, get ready for an exciting story told by Karl Hamson.
I bought that property in 1992, and I believe it was 94 or 95 that we actually built that barn. Mike Barnes actually was the main guy who built it. I designed it. At the time, we were working from Houston Road. Like one of the engineers who was working for me did all the load evaluations and stuff like this. So we knew, I wanted something that I could put 80 pounds a square foot upstairs.
Wow, 80 pounds a square foot?
Yeah. Well, it was just a matter of sizing everything. Okay. Because I thought it was, I thought eventually it'll be back to a barn. So if I fill it full of hay and I got 16 feet deep of hay bales in there, I'm going to need that. So we found the logs locally, the main part of the structure. We got all that from Gordy Henshaw. But Mike Barnes, Kelly Irving, Tel Deckel, quite a few people worked on building that thing up. When it was going up, I was working in Australia for the last bit. Remember, we were getting phone calls and trying to decide what color to make the roof and stuff like this. So I know I was working in Sydney, Australia at the time that was going up.
Okay. So, and the barn goes up, and at that time on the island, this is the mid to late 90s, that there's no community hall at that point. So your barn held a lot of community events.
As soon as we got it finished, we decided to have a big dance to celebrate that the thing was done, right? So it was in September. We decided to have an old-fashioned barn dance and advertised it and got an outfit called a Special Delivery, a bluegrass band from Victoria, to play for us. The idea was to have a fundraiser for Medicine Beach. We just decided to take on that project the Conservancy had. So we had everything we can do, so everybody pitched in, decorating. I remember we had like a fall theme, so we had like big bunches of corn stalks and stuff like this. We had corn in the cob for sale. Various Conservancy women were helping out with running various booths. We had a fire pit outside that the fire department operated because it was fire season, but they were there to help us out. It was kind of funny because we epoxy coated the floor, so it looked like it was wet. It was just beautiful, right? And the driveway was kind of sandy, and we thought, well, we're worried about dust. So we got, I think it was Highways did it for us. They sprayed some water on it. What happened then is that everybody walked in with damp sand stuck to the bottoms of their shoes.
Oh, no.
And they're all dancing in there, and that was the end of the glossy floor. It was done in one night.
Everybody had some sandpaper on their shoes.
Yeah. But it was great. We had, the bar upstairs. Various groups contributed, like the real estate company ran the bar. I remember that was, at the time, that was Windermere Realty, which became Pender Island Realty, and which is now Dockside. They ran the bar for us. Okanagan Springs donated the beer and all the cups and stuff. So it was a great night. And we raised about $19,000 that night.
And so this was a night to celebrate the barn being finished, and then to also contribute money to the Medicine Beach Conservancy.
Yes.
So after that first event that you had, it's my understanding that you had more community events in your barn?
We generally had the dance every year for several years, always about the same time of year in September. It was almost always locals, which kind of is what we were sort of trying to cater to. We're not trying to exclude anybody, but it's kind of end of summer, we get the island back, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you get so you know everybody on the ferry again. And I guess because we started off there, that's when we finished the building. It was in September. But also the upstairs area was used by music ensembles, solstice theater. Various groups would use it, and I was quite happy that, anyway, they decided that, we didn't have a hall at the time. The Hall Association, when they built the current school, the gymnasium was partially assigned for hall use. So the kitchen and stuff that's in there now was always kind of hall property. But it was a pretty big barn, and you can only use it when the kids weren't using it. So there'd been various attempts to get a hall going in various properties, and they always seemed to be stalled one thing or another. So I approached Pira and offered them the 3 acres that where the hall is now.
I'm sorry, what is Pira, so people know?
Pira it's a mouthful. Pender Island Agricultural and Recreational Hall Association. That owns the New to You building, the epicenter, the hall, and the library property. So it's kind of an umbrella organization that the haulage are they spend most of their energy, I guess, on hall issues. But they own the Ochterlony Center, which is where the old school, which is now the New to You, and the library and the epicenter are.
Okay. So you approached them about donating some property?
Yes, I said if they wanted to, they could have that corner where the hall is now of my place, because it wasn't really of any use to me. It was the opposite end of the farm from where I was focusing most of my energies. And so they accepted that. And they were still kind of spinning their wheels. So a bunch of us, about 8 people, my wife at the time, Sally, and myself, and Brent and Judy Marsden, Joan Ellie Donahue, Brad and Lynn McCochran, formed this group, an informal group, and we met every Wednesday about 7 o'clock in the morning, and started to work on the building design, getting all that in place. Mike Barnes, who built my shop, was also part of that group. He was responsible for a great deal of the structural design. Had to get it engineered, of course, but that's how that came about. And it was Mike Barnes was responsible for getting the structure actually up, the erection of all the big logs and everything else. That was all done by Mike. And a bunch of other volunteers. We had a sawmill on site. We milled up the logs where we had to clear the building site because it was quite heavily treed. So we milled all that up. Again, lots and lots of volunteers.
An aspect I want to touch on, if not later than now, is the raising of the money for the hall. Maybe let's just talk about that a little bit, about how you guys came up with the money to build the hall.
Well, we were all busy building the hall and dealing with the nuts and bolts and the nails and stuff, right? So I approached Bill Hanson, who had just retired from Salish Construction. I buttonholed him and asked him if he'd take on the fundraising, and he agreed to do that. So he made it his life's work for many, many months. Sort of dredged up money from places I never would have thought of, like the Vancouver Foundation and things like this. Plus, we were selling coffee mugs, T-shirts, sweatshirts, having various events, including more dances at my place, right? That was for hall fundraising. I think the total cost was $780,000, if I remember right. That was all raised here. Well, we had help like from Pira. We had a kiosk at the Driftwood every weekend, selling stuff and accepting donations and things like this. So we made a real effort to, get this all happening, and everybody pulled together. It was the whole island was behind it, making it happen.
In terms of the donating, I thought this would be funny to bring it because I was talking to Brent Marsden last week, and he was telling a story about going into somebody's house just a couple weeks ago, and there was an old calendar on the wall that was part of the fundraising for the hall. And Brent told this hilarious story about this calendar where some Pender Island gentlemen appeared in. Maybe if you just want to tell us a little bit about this fundraising calendar.
Yeah, somebody had the great idea that... like because the firefighters had done this, right? Not on Pender, but we heard of fire departments having all these guys, these muscle-bound guys wearing little or nothing as calendars, posters. So we decided we'd take this on as well. So it was pretty funny. I know I got one of me, and all I got is a hat in a very strategic location. It was fun, and they weren't all taken at once. I mean, the photographer would organize us one at a time, sort of thing, to get these pictures taken. So
Brent Marsden was telling a story about he was posing for this up on a ladder with only wearing a tool belt.
Yeah,
on a Sunday morning when church traffic was driving by.
Yeah. And John Bradley just got a chainsaw. Right. I remember that. Yeah. So,
yeah. And he said the calendars were being sold for, I think it was like $30 a calendar. I can't
remember. But anyway, it raised money. And we'd do anything to make money. Right? Or anything within reason.
Within reason. Yeah. For sure. So it took a lot of coming together, and it sounded as if a lot of people worked really hard on making this happen.
One of the things that was really, I thought was one of the most beautiful parts of making that thing is the totem poles in the front. And we had a First Nations guy living on the island. He's passed away now, Victor Reese. So it was undertaken to have the women of the island carve those totem poles under his tutelage. Remember, we started off and we had to make the tools first. So we had to make all the carving adze. I did some of it in my shop. I remember I used my plasma cutter to cut up car springs, leaf springs, to make the adze blades, and then put an edge on them. We used cedar branches for the handles. They're all lashed, made in the old-fashioned way. The hall was up already when they were doing this carving, but there's a lot of ritual involved, and they'd be working outside in the yard in the sun, and these various women are all carving, working away at this. And then when the day was done, they would have to pick these totem poles up on sticks that are carried. So they marked them like you'd carry a coffin, except the poles are underneath it. So they're walking along, and they would put cedar boughs on top of the half-finished carving, and they'd walk it up the ramp into the upstairs, where it would wait till next week's session, right?
Wow.
And it was really quite a thing to watch that.
That's kind of remarkable that you guys built your own tools to do that.
Yeah.
Was that a prerequisite to doing the carvings, or was that?
Well, the whole thing was quite spiritual. So that was part of that.
Okay. And sorry, the gentleman's name who initiated this, who doesn't live...
Victor Reese.
Victor Reese.
Yes. He was a carver. He used to do a lot of masks and things. But he passed away at a relatively young age, 10 years ago, I guess. That's the story on those poles. I guess there was probably 20, 30 women worked on them.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And the person to talk to about that would be Doreen Ball. Yeah. Because, Chuck worked with us on the building, right? That's her husband, right? But Doreen, I remember her being one of the real workers on that thing, right? So... And of course, the cedar was donated. So there's a lot of donations in kind, like the logs were all donated to make that hall, right? It was pretty much one of the things I did is I sourced all the logs. So I would go to some landowner and say, would you donate a tree? And, because you had to get the trees are huge, some of them. If you look at them, some go, really long. They're 70 odd feet long. And they're, huge diameter. And, we had to find straight trees. And you had to find trees that we could get out, that they could be felled without smashing them or smashing everything else. And we had to get them skidded out, right? So local guys would fall them and they'd haul them out. and they were stored in my field for quite a while, and then they were peeled. Unfortunately, we cut them a wee bit too late in the year, so the wood went moldy because of the moisture. The sap was running really hard, and it was all in this brand new growth, just in the Cambrian layer. So we had to sand and sand and sand, where the logs in my shop are golden colored. We just peeled them and that was it. You had to touch them. And there, they all turned black.
Oh, wow.
So we had guys, many volunteers with little grinders out there, hour after hour after hour, sanding the mold off to get down to a better color. And that's why the logs in the hall are kind of gray, and the ones in my place are golden, because it's the same design. It's the same building, pretty much. The hall is bigger, but it's the same principle of how it was constructed.
Yeah, this is all super new information to me. It kind of blows me away that there's a mirror image almost just less than a kilometer away through the trees from where the hall is.
Well, people were using it, and they said, this is all we really need. So the building committee then, we actually got a guy called Bill Bastendorf, who's, again, not with us anymore. He actually built a model on a chunk of plywood, and we could lift the roof off. So we could go to these various user groups, like Solstice Theater, the time we had Girl Guides on the island, for example, and let everybody have a look and see what we're thinking about, and get input from them on what they would like to see and how we could do things, right? So we would make sure that we would attend these various meetings of these various groups and show off what we're trying to do, right?
Did that help the process or complicate the process?
It helped, because if you're going to have something like this, you got to get everybody on board.
Sure, yeah.
So that way, it wasn't the building committee built the hall, it was the island built the hall.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like a reasonable way to go about it, right? That asking the people who are going to be using it what they'd like to see. I guess that old saying, too many cooks in the kitchen, that's what I was thinking initially, right?
Well, because we had something to show them. We just said, what do you want to see? I mean, the Solstice Theater would want a 1,000-seat theater.
Right.
Right. You know, and if you just, but because, okay, this would be your space.
Yeah.
Right. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Right. I mean, so you actually had something to show them. Because if you left it wide open, you never get, that's what happened. That's why nothing happened in the previous 20 years. They did all these studies. Right. and we just said, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then once the building was finished, it was handed over to Pura. So the building committee actually did, along with the rest of the island, of course. I mean, then our work was done.
I love how you mentioned about sourcing the logs and then going to particular landowners and picking out particular trees and recognizing that one's straight, that one can be skidded out, that one can be felled without crashing into anything. That's something I never would have thought of being an aspect as to building the hall.
Well, these are people's backyards that you're taking the trees out of, right?
Yeah.
Sort of, right? And, various people would say, sure, right? So one was next door to me, that was forested at the time. Bert and Daphne Jervis donated them, one of the huge ones that's in there, and many other people. All the logs were donated. And I had told them at the time that we put a plaque on that log saying that's where it came from. But then a decision was made elsewhere that no one should get any credit for anything that happened in the hall, and including like yellow cedar doors, the main doors on the entrance. They put a little initial on the bottom, and we have to carve that off so no one gets recognized. And then finally that all went away. But someone tried to donate a piano, and they wanted a plaque say it was in memory of somebody, and Pura refused it because that would mean that someone's getting recognition for donating something. And so that wasn't a very good time when that was happening, because the hall was all done and we were not able to keep up with our promises that we'd made to people. But anyway, that all changed with the change of people. So now there's a great big list of everybody up on the wall that contributed to it. And if you go in there, you'll see that. It's just a great big, what's about 3 feet, 4 feet square. Mm-hmm. It's just solid names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As that should be up there for sure. I think it's nice to be recognized for contributing to things. Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing the stories about the hall. I think that people who listen to this are going to step into the hall and look at it with a bit of a different eyes. I know I will personally. Yeah. It's incredible to have some of these stories documented about what went into it. Anything you want to say to finish this off? The mic is yours.
No, I just feel incredibly fortunate to live in a place like this. And obviously my family does as well. So thanks for talking to me.
Okay, so here is the list that Karl was referring to that includes all the people that helped to contribute to the building of this amazing hall. So when you come into the community hall, if you go to the back left-hand corner of it, you'll be able to find this sign, and you'll see there are hundreds of names of people who helped to build this great place. So I want to thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoyed that, what you just heard was a clip from a longer podcast I did with Karl years ago. So if you'd like to listen to the whole podcast episode, you can go to the link right here, and Karl will talk about all sorts of amazing things in that one, including the preservation of Medicine Beach, an amazing feat that happened as part of Pender history as well too. Thanks for coming along and listening, and we'll see you soon.